wale ambao walikuwa chini ya Kibaki pale wakalitoa usalata kwa mambo ya MOU. Wanakiwa tulikuwa tumeandika na MOU na wakakataa mambo ya katiba. So mimi sikuwa na makosa. Mimi nilisalitiwa. Sio mtu mwingine. Mimi ndio niko na deni yangu, ndio na deni yangu sio nini kusema ati nini mimi na nikasema sio nini sio tukaenda kule Bomas of Kenya tena nikasalitiwa mara pili kwa sababu tukasema la kwa ile katiba. Kwa hiyo mimi ninadai mimi ndio wako na deni yangu, mimi sina deni watu wengine, lakini yale yote mimi nimefanya najaribu tu ni wachi kama tumeunganisha watu wa Kenya wote, tumesahau yaliyopita ili Kenya iweze kuendelea mbele.
All right, so the Raila Odinga question, there's no doubt, Linus, that without Raila Odinga, this conversation would be quite different. I mean, I will just read a couple of paragraphs. I mean, on this document, page 6, it says, Your Excellency, for 8 years between 2011 and 2018, you consistently and persistently cautioned that Raila Odinga was Kenya's foremost problem. You were only emphasizing what our people already knew, taking into account his history in the use of violence and ethnic divisions as a means to achieve political power. As a result, he is an existential threat to the economy and national unity. That is the package about Raila Odinga that has been sold very successfully over the years, especially in central Kenya, and there is a sense in which it just kind of gets repeated in that manner. And even looking at him speaking there, he knows that he has a mountain to climb, quite literally speaking.
Joe, there are different reasons as to why we have the handshake. The reason Raila Odinga is in the handshake is different from the reason Uhuru Kenyatta is in the handshake. The reasons again are different when it comes to BBI and all that, which is why there is this convergence of conflicting objectives that is complicating everything. When he cut the tape yesterday in
Githurai,
in Githurai, was that then the Chania River moment? You know, there was a time in the 60s, 70s when they would say leadership would not cross Chania River to go to the Nyeri side. I think Raila Odinga and his aides yesterday brought the tape a lot further to the boundary of Kiambu. But yes, Raila is a factor in all that we are witnessing in Jubilee. Raila Odinga has presented to Jubilee the very problem Uhuru Kenyatta presented to KANU in 2002. Remember, Uhuru Kenyatta was seen as an outsider at the time, a rookie, a greenhorn, who comes in and is catapulted to the top of the ticket. Now, when you come to 2021 now, you have this perception among certain Jubilee leadership and followers that the handshake, that BBI is about making Raila Odinga Uhuru Kenyatta's successor. That is how some of them are interpreting this, that they see the handshake, the BBI is all about pushing Raila to the Mount Kenya region and to the Jubilee areas. So the reaction now is not different from the reaction we had in 2002. That rebellion could be on, actually is on, led by Deputy President William Ruto, who is saying, this is our party, this is our record, we were delivering before this handshake came on board and all that. So Raila is a factor in the sense that it is perceived that Uhuru Kenyatta is positioning him as successor. Is that the reality though? We do not know the details of their, nobody really knows what else they discussed other than the 9 points that they released during the handshake. But politics is politics, and this is what is at play.
And the president during the interview with the vernacular radio station spoke about this. He said, and he kept talking about that. But I look at this issue in terms of what defines our elections every single election cycle. 2013, what defined the election was the ICC case, where the narrative was that wanataka kutushtaki sisi, our foreign government, na koti zao za kigeni kutushtaki sisi, so na tunapasa kama kuna kesi ifanywe hapa nyumbani. So the ICC was the defining factor in the 2013 elections. Now come to 2017, it was incumbency. And the fact that tuna miradi ambayo tujamaliza, we should not let others come na wasambaratishe what we are already doing, so we need to finish what we are already doing now, the projects kama ni maji, kama ni barabara, so that tuweze kumaliza our term. That was 2017. Now in 2020, I see that there are, in my opinion, two issues that are defining 2022 elections. One is the BBI and all that pertains to it, the constitutional change, those opposed to it and those for it. It is one of the issues that are going to define the elections in 2022. And the second one is the hustler versus dynasty narrative, in terms of that is the slogan that the deputy president is going with as he travels around the country. And you see it even in his in the rallies that he attends with those leaders who support him. It is almost meticulously planned in terms of what will be said. If you look at the rallies, everyone who speaks in the same tone, passes the same message. Kwa Kiswahili tunasema kibwagizo ni kimoja, kama shairi. So those are what, in my opinion, seem to be what will define the 2022 elections as we go forward.
Joe, let me pick it from somewhere Linus left it. In fact, the page 6 of this document that you read, the second paragraph says, and I repeat what you had read initially, we must be direct and truthful with you. We cannot sell Raila Odinga in our region or indeed any other imposed presidential candidate. You blame the leaders and the people of Mount Kenya for being reluctant to accept the handshake and the BBI. It is not their fault. Then it continues. You see, the challenges that you see now are not new. Track it back to 2018 March during the handshake. The president has at least several times tried to explain how this handshake came up. You remember that story that he has told us repeatedly about how for hours they sat there, nobody was saying anything. They took copious amounts of tea before they could deliberate on how to go about it. There was suspicion from the onset what the handshake was. The president and the former prime minister have tried to explain what was the reasoning behind the handshake. But the suspicion from the other end has always been that there is a hidden card, a hidden agenda behind the handshake. And this, in one way or another, kinda scuttled the succession arithmetic in Jubilee. And that is where the source of Tanga Kieleweke discussion came about, if you remember. Because on one hand, the Kieleweke team was seen as defending the handshake, while the Tanga team was seen as defending the deputy president and what they called infiltration into the party. You even remember that discussion some time back, the deputy president saying that hamwezi kunifukuza ODM, alafu mje kunifukuza Jubilee. And the explanation is simple. It's succession management, as we said earlier. So look at the discussion that is in the Mount Kenya region. Once Raila Odinga is mentioned and once William Ruto is mentioned, it takes you back to what was said about the former prime minister in the central Kenya in 2007, in 2013, in 2017. So there are some people, quite a number of people who voted not for, but against. You get the point? In 2007, 2013, 2017, who voted as a result of what they were told about him. He will do this, he does this, and so on and so forth. So it's that discussion that is being taken advantage of by the MPs allied to the deputy president, telling the Mount Kenya population that this is the person that you were told about in 2007, 2013, 2017. Notwithstanding whatever may have been said, may have been, propaganda and political rhetoric. In fact, I want us to play a soundbite by the former prime minister saying that BBI is not about aiding him to get to State House.
kuanzia 2018, 2019, 2020 walikuwa wakiniuliza ati hii mambo hii imeleta kwa sababu ya Uhuru akuunga mkono kwa uchaguzi 2022. Nikasema hapana, mimi sitaki kuongea juu ya mambo ya 2022. Wakati ikifika na mimi mwenyewe nitaongea. Okay? Sasa sitaki kusema mimi nitakuwa candidate au mimi sitakuwa candidate. Yale ambayo nataka sasa ni kuuza BBI tu. Hiyo ndio mimi nataka. Na hii ndio nataka kuacha kama legacy ya Kenya. Watu waangalie hii sio ni kama means ya kupeleka Raila katika ikulu, hapana. Wacha Raila kando, waangalie BBI kama inaleta manufaa kwa Kenya.
You see, the discussion largely hasn't been about the content of the document, but largely about the perception, the fears, the views, you know, the thinking that maybe behind the process there's something else. And that is what the President and the former Prime Minister will continue to say in relation to the BBI process, because it has been treated with suspicion as to whether they will be able to convince the region to look at the content and the benefits as opposed to the politics around it and the succession. And lastly, these two things are side by side, you know, the proposed constitutional changes and the succession politics, side by side.
But that is how they actually equate Raila Odinga to handshake and BBI, because you see, they say you blame the leaders and the people of Mount Kenya region for being reluctant to accept the handshake and the BBI. It is not their fault. The successful effort you made to persuade the people and render Raila Odinga unacceptable in Mount Kenya cannot be undone in your lifetime. So essentially they're saying all this lukewarmness about handshake and BBI, it is because of how the people feel about Raila Odinga. So there's a sense in which...
Or they were made to feel.
Yes. So what you're saying essentially is true in the sense that what these leaders are saying is that whatever it is that comes packaged alongside Raila Odinga, whether it is handshake, BBI, or call it anything else, even if it was the expressway from the airport to Westlands, if there was anything Raila Odinga to do with it, then probably it will not be acceptable. It will not be acceptable to the region, which is an interesting perspective, considering that you said sometimes the vote is against this person rather than for. In fact, there are many people who say that if Raila Odinga went on the ballot, probably the voter turnout would be a totally different picture if you take, for example, the last election or the one before it.
You see, Joe, one of the biggest problems the political space is finding itself right now in is that the content of the BBI has not risen above the politicians, has not risen above the players. You see, we've attempted and changed the constitution a couple of times, and we started in 2005. There was always a rallying point, and that's why we spoke of, as a country, constitutional moments. There was a constitutional moment in 2005 because the country was just emerging from the 40 plus years of Kanu rule. And so when the delegates gathered at Bomas of Kenya, there was that anticipation that we are going to change how we are going to be governed. In 2010, when we eventually passed the new constitution, our constitutional moment was spurred by the fact that we nearly disintegrated as a country in at the back of the 2007 election with the post-election violence. So we looked at the constitution as something bigger than our differences, something bigger than our politicians, something that can actually keep us safe when our politics fails us. Now, we come to BBI, and this is the typical problem BBI is facing right now. It has failed yet, at this point, to acquire a flagship issue that will rally people around what the president more than twice now has called a constitutional moment. And that is why everybody, especially the critics of BBI, are falling back to what they know. 2022, Raila Odinga, William Ruto. That is how it's shaped. And that is partly the failure of the document itself. There is not a single issue in the substance of it that is resonating across, that people can look at it and say, see above the politics, see that substance, that issue above Raila Odinga, above William Ruto, above the President Uhuru Kenyatta. Yes.
No, I just wanted to move on a little bit. I know the BBI probably is also a victim of the timing of it. I mean, there's a sense in which it has coincided with things that are really pressing people, whether it is economic things, whether it is COVID and all of that. But I wanted us to talk a little bit about what happened in Githurai yesterday, and also today we saw at Bama, where suddenly we are seeing that thing that is a perennial problem we've seen over the several elections that we've seen all the way, I think from 92 all the way up to now, where we see political intolerance, we see rallies being disrupted, we see violence at political meetings and that sort of thing. Jamila, that has to worry anybody who lives in this country.
It's true, because after what happened to Kenya in 2007, the post-election violence should have taught us a lesson, because the scars of what happened then still live in the hearts and minds, and even physically of a lot of Kenyans. And it's sad to see what happened in Githurai yesterday in terms of political intolerance. Stones were thrown and it was chaotic and people were injured. And then we see a repeat of it today at Bama, where also a meeting that was being addressed by the Deputy President was disrupted, almost in retaliation to what happened the previous day in the meeting that was being addressed by ODM leader Raila Odinga. And I say, as a country, we should be worried when we see such pictures, such videos circulating, especially when we have, I think, almost 17 months to the elections. Today we're talking about how usually we start having to think about how will we cover the political season, how will we cover the elections much later, whenever we have the election cycle coming. But now, because of what we are seeing this early in the year, in 2021, when you have an election in August 2022, it is worrying in terms of now what next. I would shudder to think that every time when we have either of this leader addressing a meeting, you will have disruptions happening. Thank God no one has been killed since yesterday and today, and that is. But remember what happened in Kano? We had people losing their lives because of almost the same thing, a meeting that was going on that was Ilitibuliwa, that was disrupted. So I think we need to have political, is it tolerance now?
Yeah.
Because going forward, an election always has contestants. It pits 2 or 3 or 4 different leaders who are vying for a position. Why can't we just have them sell their agenda,
but I mean,
and then go into an election?
It's a serious indictment, quite frankly, because, I mean, think about it. Someone has a meeting, you don't like that person, just stay away. In any case, at the end of the day, there's going to be a date when people are going to vote, whether it is BBI, if it gets a referendum, or whether it is 2022, that election. You will walk there, you're alone, and go to that booth and mark whatever ballot, whatever space on that ballot you want to mark. And that is it. I mean, because quite frankly, where we are going is quite dangerous, considering also that we have a lot of people, a lot of young people who are coming out of learning institutions. They haven't got jobs. They are dealing with so many other social problems. And so you have a situation where there's something that is seemingly exciting. You know the way Mahatma Gandhi used to say that I object to violence because when it looks like it has some good, that good is temporary, but the evil is permanent. The evil that it causes is permanent. So like you were saying, some of the things that happened in 2007, people are still feeling them right now. There are people who've never gone back to their homes. There are actually people who see anything like that and they go into almost like a depression because they still have recollections from what happened. So I think it is something that I personally would have imagined that the politicians would take it a bit more seriously. The political leaders would actually come out and address that issue if they truly believe that it is something that is dangerous to the country, and it is.
Unfortunately, Joe, what we are seeing now is extremely dangerous in the sense that it gives you signs of what is likely to happen. It also gives you a reminder of what has previously happened. The unfortunate thing is that this country, no one pays the price for political violence. 2007, people died, property was looted, houses were burnt, people were maimed. I don't remember anyone who was punished conclusively for post-election violence. And that is now normalization of chaos, such that anything goes. And you feel like even if you do this, nothing will happen to you. Secondly, no one leaves their house to go and disrupt a political rally. They are mostly mobilized, financed, facilitated, incited. No one leaves their house to go and heckle somebody or disrupt. It's a plan. It's choreography, both ends. You know, if you saw what happened in Githurai, you could see some mobilization. If you saw what was happening at Burma today, that attempt to disrupt the deputy president's function, you could see some mobilization. Those young people can't just come and start throwing stones from nowhere. They must have been told, go, do ABCD for whatever reason. And it is something that we should not tolerate. It's not something that we should celebrate. I get disappointed when I see celebrations, this team saying tulinyorosha hawa, and this guy is saying tulinyorosha hawa. It's a very dangerous thing, and I'm really hoping that the necessary agencies will take action. But more fundamentally, you as a person, if you don't like politician A, stay away. Wait for the politician that you like to hold a function, then go cheer them. Otherwise, we are not doing a good job.
Linus.
Yeah, you see, Joe, before you go to Machakos, I just want to add to what Francis is saying. Intolerance is lucrative. It pays. When you tell people to stay home, and look at the number of youth that turn up for these things. They turn up not because they like it, not because they really are driven there by the persuasion, but because there is nothing else they can do. It pays. When Francis talks of mobilization, it has happened and attended to our politics for a very, very long time. The culture of disrupting rallies is so deeply entrenched that I think the only way to break it is through the strict imposition of the law by DCI, by the police. We should see people in court for mobilizing. We should see people in court for throwing stones. And we should see people in court for sponsoring, because it starts with a sponsor. Lucrative because, remember, Joe, one time there was a politician who was in trouble here in town, Nairobi. And I remember one of the sound bites, well, we didn't put it on television, but it made rounds in the social media, was toa kitu tukulete attention. And politicians know that can be, you can actually rent tension.
Wow. And I think that at the moral level, it also behooves the politicians themselves, if they truly don't believe in violence. I mean, the way, for example, Donald Trump was in serious trouble because people are saying you should have come out early enough to tell your supporters to go away. And I think the mere fact that some of these people are either your supporters or they come in your name is reason enough for you to come out as a national leader and say, you know what, this is not what I stand for. So if you are going to kill somebody, please don't do it in my name. And if you are going to do it, don't do it in my name. I do not kill people, and therefore please do not kill people in my name. I think that will be very powerful, and it will send the right signals to the people that, you know what, this thing is dangerous. So even if you are found there by the police and everything, don't say you are doing it in my name.
Interesting.
All right, we need to quickly go to Machakos. 1 minute and then we can go home. We saw the rally in Machakos, and suddenly we're seeing something that looked like a new alliance in the making. ANC leader Musalia Mudavadi, Ford Kenya leader Moses Wetangula. We saw the KANU chairman there, Gideon Moi, and of course their host Kalonzo Musyoka of Wiper. And they seem to be signaling that this is not the last joint campaign rally they're going to have. I heard Mudavadi inviting them to Kabushai and Matungu for the by-elections that are also due there. Where there is smoke, there is fire, Francis?
Probably. There's talk of a third team. Because all along you've had a discussion that guys have talked about, a two-horse race already, even before the candidates are known. There has been talk of Raila Odinga, talk of William Ruto, and when these four leaders now come up with what looks like another alliance, makes politics interesting. Whether they will walk the long haul is something interesting. But I listened to some specific sound bites that they had in Machakos, and probably sounded like something is in the offing. Not too sure whether it will be, but I think if there was a third alliance, it would be very interesting, because probably it would create another set of dichotomy in our politics, as opposed to what we are currently seeing, so that maybe you widen the field and people have more options. Listen to what they were saying in Machakos.
Safari tulio nayo ni safari ya kuunganisha wa Kenya together as one, walking to the same destiny with the same intentions for our country. Lakini ukifika kwa debe ufikirie 2022. Ujue kama jamii ya Wakamba wakati huu utakuwa kwa opposition. Si ndio? Lazima uko wapi? Ndani wapi? Na yule ambaye atafungua njia ni mama. Ni nani? Akiongozwa na nani? Na nani? Kalonzo.
Tutaenda zote na hawa ndugu. Hapa hakuna mkubwa wala mdogo. All of us are equal. Lakini tumeamua ni lazima tuambie Wakenya ukweli kwamba siasa za wizi, yani mtu anapita kule anaona Kalonzo akipita, nasema mwizi yule, na yeye mwenyewe ndio mwizi.
You see, you could hear the sentiments, but there's a question. Those four leaders have been in support of the handshake and the BBI process. So
even they still pushed it. Even.
Yeah. Is it a subset of the handshake set? My question.
Yeah. And the answer to your question, Francis, is everybody is in BBI and handshake for different reasons, and that is why sometimes the truth jumps out of their skins. And the BBI issue is really compounded by this succession debate. But let's look at Machakos again. When you look at it, it tells you one sad story, that Kenya remains one huge political orphanage, where you have a lot of talent in the form of politicians, but who cannot find an ideological home because there is none. When you look at it, you can only find maybe a home back in our history. I looked at Machakos, and these are children of the Kenya African Democratic Union, KADU. If you look at Machakos, you had Moses Wetangula, you had Kalonzo Musyoka, you had Gideon Moi, and you also had Musalia Mudavadi. You look at those regions, those were the regions that used to populate the politics of KADU. Where was KANU? KANU was in Nairobi. KANU is in the handshake. It's the Raila Kenyatta alliance. But that is one sad thing, and we've spoken about it here, is the state of party politics. Mm-hmm. It seems we'll go into every election with a new party. Kenya has been governed by very many parties since KANU left. Right now it's Jubilee, and I think it's only a section of it that is governing. There is one section that is out of it. Now you see some of these formations. We still don't know what the handshake will produce. Will it also produce another coalition? So for those who are looking for ideological stability, this is a worrying trend. because countries like Ghana, countries like Nigeria have already settled down, and they have elections that are won or lost by parties based on ideologies. You look at Ghana now, you have NDC and NPP, conservative and liberal. Which is the divide here? We can't try to keep thinking we are different. Politics is either conservative or liberal. And we have those lines here. And that's why you find people sometimes sounding lost in a stadium in Machakos, sounding homeless in Githurai, or sounding lost in Dagoretti. Because we are going for short-term fixes. All we need is an election-winning vehicle. But you see, the ideology disturbs you. It still carries you. It takes you to places that you, because it's looking for a home. And that is our tragedy as a country, the state of our party politics. We're going to go into the 2022 elections with this kind of confusion again, of documents being deposited at the register of political parties, marriages of convenience, and then they'll be followed after that by divorce proceedings, political infidelity like we are seeing in Jubilee. You have Raila Odinga in working with government, but the marriage certificate is with William Ruto. You know, there are all these things that are really confusing. So we are really chaotic when it comes to the ideological state of our political parties.
And therefore the political system is so clogged that even new ideas and new people who could probably be championing those clear ideological lines actually do not emerge.
There's actually no system.
Yeah.
There's actually no system.
All right, I think we need to end it here, and our last words tonight, we start with the memo.